On the hottest day of July, the air in West Texas seemed to shimmer with anger. The sun pressed down like a hand you couldn't shake off, and even the tumbleweeds were too stubborn to move. At the edge of nowhere, Willow Junction, just a flickering, broken gas station between here and forget, it happened. A battered black sedan tore down the empty road, kicking up a rooster tail of dust and desperation. The car jerked to a halt, engine clattering like bones, and for a second, everything stood still. Then the doors flew open. Two people, faces hidden behind sunglasses and shadow, yanked a trembling German shepherd out onto the boiling concrete. She was thin, her ribs a roadmap of hunger, but she tried to keep her head high. Esperanza. That was her name once, maybe still. In her mouth she clung to the last bit of pride she had left, her tiny, whimpering newborn pups. Their eyes weren't even open, but their cries were sharp, slicing the stillness. The faceless hands tied Esperanza to a rusted post with a filthy rope, right in the patch of shade cast by the station's broken sign. Then, just as quickly, their work was done. The car vanished down the road, leaving behind nothing but swirling dust and the echo of their engine fading into silence. Esperanza didn't bark. She didn't howl. She just stood there, panting, her body shaking as she scanned the empty highway for someone, anyone who might show mercy. Her pups squirmed blindly at her feet, one especially frail, barely more than a shiver wrapped in fur. The oppressive heat, the stench of gasoline, and the ceaseless crying mixed with the emptiness, pressing in from all sides. Every noise felt huge. The wind rattled the battered soda machine, a loose sign creaked in protest, and the gas pumps stood like gravestones, watching. Esperanza tried to move closer to her babies, but the rope cut tight against her neck. She lay down, pulling the whimpering pups close, and her breath came out ragged. She licked their faces, checked each one for life, and her tail beat a slow, desperate rhythm on the ground. She wasn't afraid for herself. She'd known fear, hunger, pain. But this, watching her pups suffer, was agony. Her mind spun with questions she couldn't answer. Why here? Why now? What did I do? Was there something wrong with me, with my babies? She pressed her nose against the smallest one, who seemed to fade a little more with every passing minute. She'd fought for her pups with everything she had. Now all she had left was her body, and a will that hadn't yet broken. Hours crawled by. The sun dipped, painting the sky with streaks of orange and violet. Esperanza's tongue lolled, her mouth dry as dust, but she refused to close her eyes. Coyotes howled somewhere in the brush, and her muscles tensed, ready to defend her family, even if it was the last thing she did. A truck rattled by in the distance, slowing as if to stop, then sped up and was gone, just another ghost on the highway. Her strength was fading fast. She looked at her pups. The strongest squirmed, the weakest barely moved. As the sky turned navy and the first stars appeared, Esperanza felt a new ache, hopelessness. She pressed her head against the concrete, listening to the fading cries, her heart pounding a slow, mournful beat. But just as the shadows thickened and the gas station seemed swallowed by night, a single sudden cry rang out. A sharp, almost angry squeal from the smallest pup. Esperanza jerked upright. Was it a goodbye or a fight to live? The sound echoed off the empty walls, bouncing into the void. In that moment, Esperanza's chest swelled with something new. A sliver of hope, fragile but real. She dragged herself upright, pulling against the rope, and licked the pup again, encouraging it with all she had left. Her paws scraped at the concrete, and she nudged her babies closer to her belly, shielding them from the wind that was picking up. The fear hadn't left, and her hunger gnawed at her bones. But now, under the cover of darkness, she refused to let go. The unanswered questions remained. Would anyone come? Was there still mercy in the world for a mother like her? Why had she and her babies been cast aside? Esperanza didn't know. All she knew was this. As long as her heart beat, as long as her pups had breath, she would not give up. And somewhere, in the sticky darkness of Willow Junction, hope flickered, tiny and trembling, but alive. Night fell fast and hard over Willow Junction, swallowing the deserted gas station in a blackness as heavy as grief. The air grew cooler, but the silence only deepened, broken now and then by the eerie yelps of coyotes prowling the brush, somewhere beyond the pale, flickering light of the last working bulb. Esperanza's body, coiled tight around her pups, trembled with exhaustion. Her breath rattled in her chest. She didn't dare sleep. Every muscle in Esperanza's body screamed for rest. But the will to survive, her own and her baby's, was stronger. She licked the weakest pup over and over, trying to stir warmth back into its limp body. The other pups whimpered, nestling close, but this smallest one barely moved, only letting out the tiniest gasp, a sound almost lost in the wind. The rope around Esperanza's neck chafed her raw, but she pressed herself into her babies, making herself a living barrier between them and the dark. Each shallow breath burned in her lungs. She was afraid if she stopped, even for a second, something would snatch her babies away. The moon climbed higher, spilling pale silver over cracked asphalt and shattered glass. The gas pumps cast ghostly shadows stretching long and thin across the lot. Somewhere nearby, a glass bottle rolled across the concrete, clinking as if in warning. Esperanza lifted her head, every sense raw and alert, but no danger materialized. Her heartbeat was thunder in her ears. Minutes slipped into hours. The world shrank to the sound of newborn cries, the scrape of her own claws against the ground, and the terrible ache of waiting for a mercy that didn't come. Coyotes called again, closer this time. A chorus of hunger and violence that made Esperanza tense every muscle, teeth bared at the night. The smallest pup spasmed, twitching weakly in the nest of its siblings. Esperanza whimpered, her nose nudging the pup's side, her tongue working in frantic strokes. She remembered in flashes when she'd been small, when her own mother had licked her warm after a storm, kept her safe from the thunder. She pressed those memories into her touch, praying they could travel through her and into this fragile life she'd been given to protect. No cars passed. No voices called out in the dark. In the shifting half-light, every shadow seemed a threat, an enemy, a thief, a curse. Esperanza's mind was caught in a cruel loop. I have to keep them alive. I can't let go. But her own body was failing. Each breath came harder, and her vision flickered, every shape bending at the edges. Still, she didn't give in. Her mother's spirit was somewhere in her bones, whispering, "Not yet." The wind picked up, swirling grit and the bitter scent of old gasoline through the empty lot. Somewhere in the distance, an engine started, a sharp alien sound that made Esperanza freeze. Hope and terror waged war inside her chest. The headlights appeared first, cutting through the night, a single pair, slow and steady, not like the car that abandoned her, but smaller, softer somehow. Esperanza's ears flicked back, her body curled tighter around her pups. She didn't know if this was salvation or the end, but she wouldn't let anyone near her babies without a fight. The car slowed as it approached the station, tires crunching gravel. Esperanza's growl was barely a whisper, but she showed her teeth. The lights swept over the broken sign, the rusted pumps, and finally settled on her. One broken mother, rope-tied, surrounded by the last things she loved. The engine idled, casting shadows across the lot, then cut off, plunging everything into silence. A figure stepped out. A woman, it looked like, moving carefully, hands empty, eyes wide with concern. Esperanza watched every move, her body tight with tension. The woman paused, seeing the dog, seeing the helpless pups. "Oh, sweetheart." The voice was low, trembling with disbelief and pity. She knelt a few feet away, arms stretched out, not a threat, just open. But Esperanza wasn't ready to trust. She snapped her teeth in warning, a feeble display, but the woman didn't flinch. Instead, she spoke in soft, soothing tones, inching forward, her face gentle in the moonlight. Esperanza's chest heaved, torn between protecting her babies and her body's desperate need for help. The woman didn't move closer. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a half-eaten sandwich, tearing off a piece and placing it within Esperanza's reach. Then she unscrewed a water bottle, setting it down on the ground. The scent of food and water was overwhelming, but Esperanza hesitated, her hunger warring with suspicion. The pups whimpered, and Esperanza nudged the food, sniffed, then took a cautious bite. The water, cool and clear, was heaven in her parched throat. All the while, the woman whispered comfort, her hands shaking. "It's okay, girl. I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. You're not alone." Esperanza's body loosened, just slightly. She didn't trust, not yet, but she no longer felt entirely alone in the world. The smallest pup let out another thin, defiant cry. Esperanza lifted her head, catching the woman's gaze. In that shared look, between lost mother and weary stranger, something passed. Recognition, maybe, or just the mutual ache of two souls abandoned in the dark. For a moment, Esperanza let the hope flicker. Far away, the coyotes gave up their hunt, and the station settled into a quieter kind of silence. Inside that quiet, Esperanza wrapped her body around her babies, eyes fixed on the woman, waiting for what came next. The battle for life wasn't over, but for the first time since the sunset, it felt like maybe, just maybe, someone might fight with her. The air inside Guadalupe Reyes's car was thick with unease as she sat parked at the edge of Willow Junction, staring at the silhouette she'd seen by the gas station's battered sign. She'd been driving home after another grueling double shift at the county hospital, desperate for a shower and some sleep, but something had tugged at her. It wasn't just the shape, big, low to the ground, unmoving. It was the unmistakable sound of crying, thin and desperate, piercing the night through her rolled-up window. She'd never been able to turn away from pain, not since her brother's accident years ago. Even now, her hands shook with the memory. Guadalupe slipped her phone into her pocket, grabbed her nurse's bag, and crossed the parking lot, each step echoing in the unnatural quiet. The station's single fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting a pale, almost forgiving glow over the scene. She saw the mother dog first, a shadow stretched taut by fear, eyes wild, ribs heaving with exhaustion. Guadalupe's heart twisted. There was no anger in the dog's face, only a pleading question, "Why me?" that echoed Guadalupe's own sleepless thoughts. She stopped a few feet away, crouched low, and spoke gently. "Hey, Mama, easy now. I'm here to help, I swear." Her voice was tired but soft, the same voice she used for children waking from nightmares in the ER. The German shepherd's ears flicked back, her lip curling to show a row of dull teeth. But she didn't lunge, didn't bark. Her body was language enough, a trembling fortress around the pile of wriggling pups, one of which barely moved. Guadalupe slowly reached into her bag and produced a bottle of water and a sandwich she'd bought hours ago at a truck stop. "I know you're scared," she whispered, "but your babies need you." She tore a piece of bread, inching it toward the dog's nose. The shepherd sniffed, hesitated, and then, after a long, loaded pause, took it from Guadalupe's hand. Not trust, never trust, not yet, but maybe something close. There was pain everywhere. It hung in the air, sharp as the stench of gasoline, settling in the way Esperanza's eyes darted to every sound, every movement, never letting her guard down. Guadalupe recognized it instantly. It was the same ache that had haunted her since her brother lost the use of his legs, since her mother had given up hope. She'd lived with that kind of hollow before, the kind that ate away at you from the inside. She sat cross-legged on the ground, giving the mother dog space, and murmured soft encouragements as she fumbled with her phone. Her hands still shook, nerves worn thin from years of emergencies and heartbreak. She scrolled to Anna's number, a friend from high school who'd grown up to become a vet, now specializing in rescues, and typed out a desperate message. "Need help. Abandoned mama dog newborns at Willow Junction. Not sure the pups will make it. Please, Anna." She hit send, then looked back at the mother dog, who was still watching her with glassy, haunted eyes. "Help's on the way, okay?" Guadalupe whispered, her throat tight. The night felt bigger now, but a sliver of hope slid into the cracks. She inched a little closer, enough to see the pups clearly. The smallest was barely breathing, sides fluttering in uneven spasms. Guadalupe's heart ached. She dug out a soft towel from her bag, laying it on the ground, and then slowly, painstakingly slowly, offered it to the mother. Esperanza sniffed the cloth, then nosed her pups closer to it. Guadalupe dared to reach out, her hand trembling, and draped the towel over the weakest pup. The shepherd didn't snap. She only watched, a low whimper escaping her chest. Guadalupe felt tears sting her eyes, hot and sharp, but she blinked them away. She wasn't the crying type, not anymore. Too many nights holding hands in hospital rooms, too many lives slipping away with nothing she could do. But here, at the edge of nowhere, she felt the old ache again, the need to try, even when the odds seemed cruel. The moments stretched. Coyotes yipped in the distance, but Guadalupe and Esperanza were locked in their own silent world. Every so often, Guadalupe spoke in whispers, telling the dog stories she'd told her brother during endless hospital nights. "You're strong. You know that. Stronger than most people I know. These babies need you. I'm not leaving, not until we get you help." For the first time, Esperanza let her head rest on her paws, her eyes never leaving Guadalupe's face. Trust wasn't built in an hour, but exhaustion sometimes built its own kind of truce. Finally, the quiet was broken by the buzz of Guadalupe's phone. Anna's voice, steady even at midnight, filled the speaker. "Stay with her. I'm 15 minutes out. Don't try to move them. I'll bring everything we need." Guadalupe let out a long, shuddering breath. She looked at Esperanza and smiled, just a flicker of warmth in the gloom. "Help's coming, Mama. You hang in there." The shepherd closed her eyes for a moment, breathing a little easier, her body still curled protectively around her fragile brood. Under the harsh lights, the two women, one human, one canine, waited together, each nursing old wounds, each refusing to give up. The only thing that mattered now was the life flickering between them, stubborn and precious, refusing to go out. And somewhere in the quiet, hope pressed itself into the world, soft, persistent, and utterly alive. The soft hum of Anna's minivan was the first sign of hope. A new sound, not belonging to the desert or the loneliness that hung over Willow Junction. Guadalupe stood up quickly, wiping her palms on her jeans, and signaled toward the headlights with a tired, grateful wave. The van rolled to a gentle stop, and Anna stepped out, her silhouette calm and steady, framed by the light inside the van. Anna moved with the practiced grace of someone who'd weathered her share of heartbreak. She'd been in situations like this before, too many abandoned dogs, too many cold nights. But the sight of Esperanza, her body coiled protectively around her pups, stopped Anna for a moment. She knelt beside Guadalupe, eyes gentle but alert, reading the story in the mother dog's trembling limbs and haunted stare. "Hey, girl," Anna murmured, lowering her bag of supplies and letting her voice settle into the space between caution and comfort. "You did good. We're here to help." She didn't reach for Esperanza, not yet. Instead, she unpacked her kit with deliberate slowness: gauze, water, canned food, a portable IV, soft towels. She glanced at Guadalupe, exchanging a silent question. "Are you ready for this?" Guadalupe nodded, though her own nerves felt stretched to snapping. Anna remembered her first rescue, how she'd rushed in too fast, how her own fear had made things worse. Now she let Esperanza sniff her hand, open and still, letting the mother dog make the first move. Esperanza's nose twitched, her ears twitching back and forth, but she didn't snap or growl. She just watched Anna's every move with an exhausted suspicion, her body torn between fear and the desperate need to trust. Guadalupe sat beside Anna, her presence steady, her voice a soft anchor in the chaos. "You're safe now, girl. Let her help you, please." It wasn't just for the dog, it was for herself too. Every gentle word, every slow gesture was a balm for her own battered spirit. Anna slid a shallow dish of water close to Esperanza's nose, adding a little chicken broth to tempt her. Esperanza hesitated, then took a careful lap, never looking away from Anna's face. "Good girl," Anna whispered, her tone low and warm. "You're brave. Let's get you and those babies taken care of." The real test was the rope. Anna spoke softly, letting Esperanza watch as she took out a pair of scissors. "I'm going to cut this off you, okay? No one's going to hurt you." She extended her hand, palm up, and waited. Esperanza sniffed her fingers, tensing, her eyes wide with a flicker of panic, but the presence of Guadalupe, the familiar smell of the nurse, steadied her. Slowly, Anna slid the scissors under the rope, careful not to touch fur or skin. Esperanza flinched, a low whimper caught in her throat, but she stayed still. With one quick, clean snip, the rope fell away, curling in the dust like a shed skin. Anna let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "There you go, Mama. Free." The release was immediate but complicated. Esperanza didn't run. She wouldn't leave her pups, but she pulled them even closer, curling around them in a tight crescent. Anna shifted her focus to the puppies, assessing their condition. The smallest one looked barely alive, its breath shallow, skin cool to the touch. Guadalupe's face twisted with worry. "Will they make it?" she whispered. Anna kept her tone steady, hiding the fear that crept into her own mind. "We're going to do everything we can." She retrieved a small IV bag and a syringe, explaining each step in a gentle murmur. "Fluids will help. They're dehydrated. I need you to keep Mama calm while I work." As Anna worked, Esperanza watched every movement. When Anna gently lifted the weakest pup, Esperanza tensed, eyes burning with a silent warning. But Anna paused, letting the mother sniff her hand, letting Esperanza see that there was no threat. "I'm just helping," Anna said softly. "Your baby needs you." and us. With hands steady from years of emergencies, Anna injected fluids under the skin of the smallest pup. The little one whimpered, but the sound was strong, a tiny spark of life in the silent night. Anna repeated the process for the rest, checking their gums, their bellies, their tiny paws. The next challenge was food. Anna opened a can of puppy-safe food and let Esperanza sniff it. Hunger finally overpowered fear, and the mother ate with a slow, desperate rhythm, always glancing at Anna and Guadalupe between bites. Guadalupe stroked Esperanza's side, speaking to her in Spanish and English, her voice a river of calm. As the hours passed, trust grew, fragile like a bird in a storm, but present. Anna wiped each pup with a warm towel, and Esperanza watched with anxious eyes, but didn't interfere. When Anna gently placed the smallest pup back beside its siblings, Esperanza nosed the baby, then looked at Anna, not with trust exactly, but with a new kind of permission. The night was long, and every moment felt like walking a tightrope stretched between hope and heartbreak. Yet, under the sickly yellow light, something shifted. Esperanza's body relaxed just slightly. Her eyes blinked slow. Her tail thumped once on the towel. Anna packed up, signaling to Guadalupe that it was time. They need medical care. Now. We can't leave them here. Guadalupe nodded, helping Anna load the pups into a padded crate lined with blankets. Esperanza refused to be left behind. She walked on shaky legs, one by one, carrying her pups herself into the van. Anna and Guadalupe exchanged a look of wonder, such determination, such love. Inside the van, Esperanza curled around her family, her body finally sagging, exhaustion overtaking every muscle. Anna slid in beside them, stroking the mother's head. We're taking you home, Mama. You made it through the hardest part. As the minivan rumbled away from Willow Junction, the empty station faded into the night, leaving only the echoes of suffering and the first fragile notes of hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Esperanza allowed herself to believe in the promise of safety, the possibility of kindness, and the slow, painful, necessary work of trust. The drive from Willow Junction to Anna's clinic on the edge of Lubbock felt endless, each mile stretching the limits of Esperanza's strength. Inside the minivan, the world was reduced to soft murmurs, the rhythmic thrum of the road beneath the tires, and the warm weight of pups pressed close against their mother's side. Anna kept one hand lightly on the crate, offering whispered reassurances as Guadalupe drove, her eyes fixed on the dark ribbon of highway unraveling ahead. Esperanza refused to rest. Every jolt or bump made her rise, low growls deep in her throat, until Anna soothed her back down with quiet words. The pups, 5 in total, one heartbreakingly frail, slept huddled against their mother's belly, sometimes twitching, sometimes letting out mewling cries that cut the quiet like a razor. The smallest one's breathing was thin and fluttery, a reminder that not all stories find miracles. At the clinic, the lights were bright and cold, fluorescent tubes buzzing overhead, casting harsh shadows on the linoleum floor. Anna unlocked the door and hurried inside, her calm now edged with the urgency she'd tried to hide from Esperanza. Guadalupe followed, carrying a box of supplies and the towel that still smelled of old fear and new hope. The building was silent, filled with the hum of machines and the distant tick of a wall clock, marking out seconds like a countdown. Anna had prepared an exam room as best she could, lining a corner with soft blankets, setting out bottles of warmed formula, and laying out her emergency kit. Guadalupe helped settle Esperanza and the pups in a makeshift nest, her hands gentle, but her movements brisk. Esperanza circled the nest 3 times before lowering herself onto the blankets, nose pressed against her pups. Her body shook with exhaustion, her eyes raw with worry, but she refused to close them. Her gaze tracked every movement, every shadow. Even now, safe for the first time in days, she stayed on guard. Anna got to work. She moved with quiet efficiency, checking each pup, recording their temperatures, feeling for signs of dehydration or infection. The smallest pup worried her the most. Its gums were pale, its heart beating too fast, too weak. Anna started a warm IV, her hands practiced, her voice a steady anchor for both Esperanza and Guadalupe. "You're doing good, Mama. Just a little longer." Guadalupe settled in a chair by the wall, her exhaustion hitting her all at once. She thought of her brother in his hospital bed, the endless nights sitting vigil, praying for a sign of improvement, a twitch of a finger, the flutter of an eyelid. Now she watched the rise and fall of tiny bellies, the way Esperanza's head bobbed every time a pup whimpered. It was all so fragile, so terrifyingly out of her hands. Anna's brow furrowed as she worked, her thoughts circling dark possibilities. Infection, malnutrition, internal bleeding. She'd seen too many nights go wrong, animals fading before sunrise, hope slipping away no matter how hard she fought. But something about Esperanza's fierce devotion gave her pause. This dog had not given up, not even at her weakest. Maybe that would make the difference. Hours blurred into one long vigil. Guadalupe dozed, her chin propped on her fist, while Anna sat cross-legged on the floor, keeping watch. Every so often, a pup would squeak and wriggle, and Esperanza would rouse herself to lick them clean, her movements slow but determined. At one point, the smallest pup went utterly still. Esperanza nudged it, panic in her eyes, a guttural whimper tearing from her chest. Anna hurried over, massaging the pup's tiny chest, her own breath held tight. The clock's ticking seemed to grow louder, seconds stretching into an eternity. Then, against the odds, the pup let out a single, ragged cry. Anna sagged in relief, and Guadalupe let out a shaky breath she didn't know she was holding. The night dragged on, heavy with uncertainty. Anna forced herself to eat a granola bar and convinced Guadalupe to drink some coffee. They spoke little, their words quiet, as if afraid any noise might upset the delicate balance of life and death playing out in the corner of the clinic. Esperanza at last allowed herself to close her eyes, though her ears never stilled. She slept fitfully, dreams haunted by the sound of engines, the stink of gasoline, the tug of a rope around her throat. Sometimes she jerked awake, only to find Guadalupe's hand resting lightly on her head, or Anna's soft voice reminding her she was safe. As dawn crept through the windows, washing the clinic in pale gold, Esperanza awoke to the sound of her smallest pup, alive, mewling, impossibly stubbornly alive. Anna checked each puppy, her hands steadier now, her face breaking into a smile as she listened to the strong, clear cries. Guadalupe knelt by the nest, tears finally spilling over, her relief raw and aching. The night had been long, and the fight was far from over. But as Esperanza nuzzled her pups, a sense of hope bloomed in the sterile light of morning. For the first time since the ordeal began, it felt possible, just possible, that they would all make it through. Anna and Guadalupe sat together, watching the family breathe in sync, a fragile peace settling over the room. The worst of the storm had passed, but its echoes would linger. In that moment, surrounded by the soft sounds of survival, the world outside, the violence, the abandonment, the coldness, seemed very far away. Here, in this tiny circle of warmth and vigilance, life had chosen to fight back, and for now, that was enough. When morning sunlight finally seeped through the frosted glass of Anna's clinic, the world outside felt changed. The hard lines of the parking lot, the faded yellow stripes, and the battered mailbox out front, all softened by a gentle golden glow. Inside, the quiet was broken by the sound of life, the pups squirming and squeaking, Esperanza's steady breaths, and the low murmur of voices as Anna and Guadalupe moved through the small waiting room. The crisis of the night had passed, but the delicate work of healing had just begun. Anna made her rounds, checking each puppy for signs of dehydration or infection. She was careful, gentle, methodical, but her exhaustion showed in the set of her shoulders and the circles under her eyes. Guadalupe, too, looked drawn, her hair pulled back in a loose bun, eyes bright with hope and worry. Still, there was a new lightness in the air, a sense that maybe, after all the terror, something good could grow from suffering. Word of the rescue spread through the community by noon. Anna's assistant posted about Esperanza and her pups on social media, and soon neighbors began to arrive with offerings, blankets, old dog toys, bags of food, handwritten notes of encouragement. Children came with their mothers after school, pressing homemade cards into Guadalupe's hands. For Mama Esperanza, they wrote in big, crooked letters, decorated with hearts and paw prints. Anna set up a pen in the corner of the clinic's largest room, filling it with fresh towels, plush toys, and water bowls. Esperanza eyed each new visitor warily, but she allowed the children to watch her and the pups through the gate. Some kids knelt quietly for long minutes, just watching, their faces solemn and gentle. Esperanza was changing. The old fear still lingered in her eyes, but with each passing hour she allowed herself to relax, just a little. She began to eat more, lapping up warm broth and picking through the food Anna offered. Sometimes, after feeding her pups, she'd lift her head and allow Anna to scratch behind her ears, a hesitant, almost embarrassed gesture of trust. When Guadalupe arrived with coffee and fresh croissants, Esperanza's tail thumped against the blankets. The nurse sat beside her, sharing bits of bread, murmuring about her own life and her brother's progress in rehab. A bond formed between the women, their lives now connected by the unlikely miracle that had survived the night. Anna, who had always kept a part of herself protected behind professional boundaries, found herself drawn in by Esperanza's story. She started coming in early, staying late, fussing over the pups as if they were her own. The smallest, the one who'd nearly slipped away, became her special charge. She named him Lucky, his tiny frame marked by a shock of white on his chest. Guadalupe visited every morning, always bringing something for the staff: donuts, homemade tortillas, a new blanket. She lingered by the pen, talking softly to Esperanza, sometimes reading aloud from the local newspaper or recounting small victories from the hospital. Esperanza listened, her eyes following Guadalupe, ears twitching at the sound of her voice. The community's response surprised Anna. She'd grown used to rescuing animals with little help from others, to long, lonely nights and hard goodbyes. But this time, neighbors offered rides to the clinic, dropped off extra food, and even organized a fundraiser to cover the costs of the pups' care. A retired teacher brought a stack of children's books and sat in the waiting room, reading stories to anyone who would listen. Local businesses donated cleaning supplies and dog beds. With every act of kindness, Esperanza opened up a bit more. She began to let the staff approach, even licking the hands of Anna's assistant when treats were offered. The pups grew stronger by the day, eyes finally opening to reveal sleepy blue gazes. They stumbled around the pen, learning to walk, tumbling over each other in a riot of oversized paws and clumsy legs. Lucky, though still smaller than his siblings, proved the most adventurous, always the first to tug at Esperanza's tail or wobble into Anna's lap. One afternoon, as Anna cleaned the exam room, she caught Esperanza watching her with a new kind of gaze, soft, curious, almost grateful. Anna set down her mop, knelt beside the pen, and extended her hand. Esperanza sniffed it, then, in a gesture that nearly brought Anna to tears, nudged her palm with her nose. Anna laughed, a sound full of relief and release, but even with all this hope, there was an undercurrent of worry. Anna couldn't help but wonder how she would find homes for 5 growing pups and their scarred, anxious mother. The puppies would be adopted easily. Everyone wanted a cute, healthy puppy. But what about Esperanza? Would anyone see past her history, her wariness, the marks of a life spent struggling? Anna reminded herself to take things one day at a time, but the question haunted her. For now, the present was enough. The pups grew stronger, Esperanza's wounds healed, and the women who'd saved her found their own wounds easing too. In the gentle rhythm of daily care, feeding, cleaning, cuddling, Anna and Guadalupe discovered a new kind of purpose. Each morning, Esperanza greeted them with a tentative wag, her eyes a little brighter, her body a little stronger. The community rallied around the story. Neighbors who'd never spoken before began sharing coffee in the clinic's tiny break room, telling stories of the pets they'd loved and lost. Parents brought their children by after soccer practice, letting them sit quietly with Esperanza and the pups, learning that sometimes the greatest acts of kindness start with simply being present. As the sun set each evening, Anna would watch Esperanza curl around her pups, the clinic bathed in the soft glow of hope and second chances. For the first time in a long time, Anna let herself believe that the world could be changed, one fragile connection at a time. And Esperanza, once abandoned and broken, found a measure of peace in the simple presence of those who refused to give up on her. Spring settled into Lubbock with the gentle promise of green grass, long afternoons, and wildflowers blooming along the fences outside Anna's clinic. By now, Esperanza's story had become something of a legend in the community, a symbol of resilience, kindness, and hope. The waiting room overflowed most afternoons with curious visitors hoping to glimpse the famous German Shepherd and her playful pups. Journalists came by with cameras, and the clinic's Facebook page was filled with photos of the family tumbling together, napping in a sunbeam, or cuddling with the children who stopped by every day. Esperanza herself had changed. Her body filled out with regular meals, and her coat glistened in the sunlight. She no longer flinched at every sound. Instead, she watched her pups play, her eyes soft and steady, her tail wagging with a quiet pride. Lucky, the smallest, had survived against all odds and grew more curious and energetic each day. The other pups, Sable, Ranger, Luna, and Bella, became their own little pack, tumbling over each other in mock battles, wrestling with each other's ears and tails. Anna knew it was time to start thinking about adoption. The pups, now 8 weeks old, were strong, healthy, and ready for new homes. She began sorting through applications, emails, handwritten letters, even a few phone calls from out of state. Everyone wanted a puppy. The phones rang constantly, and Anna's inbox overflowed with people offering cozy couches and big backyards for the little ones. But when Anna asked about Esperanza, the answers changed. She's lovely, but we're really looking for a puppy. Is she okay with cats? With kids? Some folks sounded nervous when Anna explained the scars on Esperanza's body or her cautious temperament. Others hesitated at the thought of adopting a mother who had lived through so much. One family showed up in person, a young couple with 2 kids. The children squealed with delight at the sight of the puppies, but when Esperanza padded over to investigate, the mother drew her children back, whispering, "Careful." Esperanza froze mid-step, her tail still, her ears lowering. Anna's chest tightened. The woman smiled apologetically, but Anna recognized the fear. Too many saw the wounds and not the warrior. Guadalupe, who now visited the clinic daily, grew frustrated as she watched family after family pass over Esperanza. "She deserves better," Guadalupe said one evening as she and Anna sat on the back porch, watching the sun paint the sky pink. Esperanza and her pups chased each other in the long grass, their coats dusted with pollen. Anna sighed, sipping her cold coffee. "I know. I just can't split them up. Not after everything they've survived together. But what if the only way to give them a future is to separate them?" Guadalupe shook her head, her jaw set with determination. "She's given up everything for those puppies. After all she's been through, she deserves to stay with them." Her voice broke a little. "We promised her safety. That means more than a warm bed." The 2 women sat in silence, watching as Esperanza barked softly at a curious stray cat that had crept too close to the pups. Her loyalty, her courage was undeniable. Anna felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She'd seen families separated before, animals adopted out alone, old dogs left behind, siblings never seeing each other again. She didn't want that for Esperanza. Days passed, and Anna refused all offers that meant splitting the family. She answered each message kindly but firmly. "We're looking for someone willing to adopt the whole family, not just a puppy." Some people argued, others faded away. Still, Anna held out hope. The right home was out there. It had to be. One quiet afternoon, as Anna finished her rounds, a large manila envelope arrived in the mail. The return address was just outside town. She opened it and found a handwritten letter, shaky but earnest. "Dear Anna, my name is Walter Miller. My wife Eileen and I heard about Esperanza and her puppies from our neighbor's granddaughter, who volunteers at your clinic. We're both retired teachers, living on a small ranch just west of town. We've always had dogs, rescues mostly, and our house feels too quiet since our last old hound passed away last fall. We have plenty of room for running, a big barn for shade, and a creek where pups can play. We'd love to offer a home to Esperanza and all her babies, together. Please call if you think we'd be a good fit. Sincerely, Walt Eileen Miller." Anna felt tears welling up as she finished the letter. She handed it to Guadalupe, who read it twice and smiled through her own tears. "That's it, Anna. That's the one." Anna called the Millers that night. Walt's voice was slow, kind, and steady, just like the letter. He spoke of dogs he'd loved before, of mornings spent walking through the pastures, of nights by the fire with a hound asleep at his feet. Anna heard the quiet longing in his voice, the kind that only comes from having lost something you loved. She knew in her bones that this was the family Esperanza needed. Within a week, the Millers visited the clinic. Eileen brought a basket of homemade biscuits, kneeling in the grass to greet each pup. Esperanza approached her cautiously, nose twitching, tail low. Eileen sat perfectly still, holding out her hand. After a long moment, Esperanza sniffed her fingers, then leaned in, letting Eileen stroke her ears. Walt watched, eyes shining. Anna watched Esperanza as she circled her pups, head high, eyes clear. For the first time, Anna saw not just a survivor, but a mother, proud and ready to begin again. She turned to Guadalupe and smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. She's finally found her forever home. And with that, the future began to open, a little uncertain, a little wild, but full of promise and love. The day Esperanza and her pups left the clinic for the last time, the entire staff gathered out front, waving goodbye as Anna helped load the dogs into the back of the Miller's old pickup. There was laughter and more than a few tears, but the air felt lighter, a celebration rather than a loss. The Millers stood side by side, Walt's arm draped around Eileen's shoulders, both beaming with excitement and nervous anticipation. Esperanza watched the scene quietly, pressed protectively against her pups, her eyes alert but unafraid. The drive out to the ranch wound through rolling pastures flecked with spring wildflowers, bluebonnets, and Indian paintbrush painting the ditches in riotous color. The sun was bright and warm, the sky an endless Texas blue. Esperanza sat tall in the back seat, occasionally resting her chin on Lucky's head, her gaze never leaving the landscape slipping past. Every turn in the road seemed to bring a new scent, a new horizon. When the pickup finally turned off the main road and creaked down the long gravel driveway, the Miller Ranch came into view. It was everything Anna had hoped for. Acres of open land, a red barn with peeling paint, old cottonwood trees casting wide shadows, and a shallow creek that sparkled in the sunlight. Eileen opened the passenger door, stepping out with a gentle word, and Esperanza hopped down, tail wagging tentatively. One by one, the pups followed, tumbling over each other in their eagerness to explore. Walt and Eileen knelt in the grass, calling the dogs by name. Esperanza circled the children, nose twitching, her body language a careful blend of caution and curiosity. Sable and Luna raced toward the barn, noses to the ground, while Ranger barked joyfully at a butterfly and Lucky tried to climb onto Walt's lap, winning an affectionate laugh. Bella rolled in the clover, her black and tan coat gleaming. For a moment, Esperanza hesitated. She looked back at Anna, her eyes searching for reassurance. Anna knelt and stroked Esperanza's muzzle, voice soft and steady. "This is your home now, sweet girl. You made it." Esperanza pressed her head against Anna's chest, a long, deep exhale shuddering through her body. Anna hugged her, fighting tears, then stood and let Eileen take her place. The family explored their new kingdom together. Esperanza led the pups along the edge of the creek, watching closely as they splashed in the shallows. She sniffed at the barn doors, tail held high, and found a sunny patch near the fence where she lay to watch the pups chase each other in wide, looping circles. The scars along her side and legs, once signs of pain, now shone in the sunlight like badges of honor. Walt and Eileen introduced the dogs to every inch of the ranch. They pointed out the safe places to dig, the soft piles of hay for sleeping, the sturdy oak where they hung the tire swing for visiting grandkids. Esperanza soon understood that here there were no ropes, no shouts, no threats, just the gentle routine of ranch life. The easy rhythm of mornings spent watching the sun rise over the pasture, afternoons napping on the porch, and evenings curled by the fire. Neighbors came by to welcome the new arrivals. Some brought biscuits, others toys or hand-me-down collars. The local postman, who'd heard the story on the radio, brought a squeaky ball for Lucky, who promptly disappeared under the porch with it. The pups reveled in the attention, chasing each other from one visitor to the next, tumbling in the grass, barking with delight. Esperanza was wary at first, but when the visitors crouched low and waited, she came, always cautious, but always coming closer, her trust growing with each gentle hand. Guadalupe visited the ranch 2 days later, driving out after her shift with a bag of treats and a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked on the roadside. When she arrived, Esperanza met her at the gate, tail wagging with recognition. The nurse knelt in the dust, letting Esperanza nuzzle her face, and the pups swarmed around, yipping and pawing at her pockets for treats. Anna joined them in the yard, leaning against the fence as she watched Esperanza move freely in the open space, her posture tall and proud, her scars no longer hidden but shining in the afternoon sun. Guadalupe squeezed Anna's hand, her voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Anna. She's home." Anna shook her head, smiling. "No, we did it, all of us." She watched as Eileen sat in the shade, reading aloud to the dogs as if they were grandchildren, Walt tossing sticks into the creek for the puppies to chase. The old barn cat, Queenie, even allowed Esperanza to share a nap in the hay, the truce sealed by a gentle bump of noses. As dusk settled, painting the sky in gold and violet, Esperanza lay on the porch, her pups sprawled across her belly and paws. The ranch glowed with peace, a peace so deep it seemed to settle into every corner, every creak of the boards, every breath of evening wind. Esperanza closed her eyes, body finally relaxed, dreams no longer haunted by fear or hunger. Anna and Guadalupe stood by the gate as the stars blinked awake overhead, sharing a silence that needed no words. They watched Esperanza and her pups, whole at last, a living testament to resilience and the kind of love that refuses to let go. And for the first time in her life, Esperanza truly belonged. Her journey, so fraught with pain, hope, and endurance, had led her here, to a place where every new dawn was a promise kept, and every gentle touch was proof that home was real. The days slipped quietly into weeks at Miller Ranch, each one painting a richer portrait of healing and belonging for Esperanza, her pups, and the humans whose lives had become inseparably tied to theirs. By now, the routines were familiar, the pups tumbling into the grass at dawn, Walt whistling as he fed the animals, Eileen humming old country songs in the kitchen, and Esperanza leading her brood on exploratory missions around every corner of the property. The trauma of abandonment had faded, replaced by a calm so deep it sometimes felt sacred. Guadalupe found herself returning to the ranch whenever she could, sometimes bringing Anna or sometimes coming alone, finding peace in the slow, honest rhythm of country life. One warm afternoon, she stood under the sprawling arms of a cottonwood tree, eyes drifting across the pasture where Esperanza and the pups wrestled in wildflowers. The Texas sky was impossibly wide, the world still and clear. Guadalupe pressed a hand to her chest, letting herself finally breathe. She thought back to that first night at Willow Junction, the sharp scent of gasoline, the neon hum of a broken light, the hollow, desperate sound of pups crying in the dark. There had been so much pain and fear. Guadalupe knew, in a way she hadn't wanted to admit, that she'd recognized herself in Esperanza's eyes. The ache of loss, the weight of helplessness, the stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would come. The act of stopping, of seeing suffering and not turning away, had changed something deep inside her. She'd always told herself that her work as a nurse was enough, that her compassion had limits set by hospital walls and family tragedies. But seeing Anna refuse to give up, watching Esperanza refuse to surrender, and witnessing a whole community mobilize for a broken dog and her family, it made Guadalupe reconsider what courage really meant. She noticed how everyone, in small ways, had been changed by this story. Anna, who'd once kept her emotions under lock and key, now let herself celebrate victories, big or small, with the people and animals around her. Guadalupe saw the way Anna's face lit up when Esperanza came to her willingly, tail wagging, eyes bright. Anna found a new sense of purpose in rescue work, her heart more open than it had been since before her first heartbreak. Esperanza's trust, earned slowly, painfully, became a symbol of hope for everyone who visited. Even Walt and Eileen, quiet and steadfast, admitted the ranch had felt empty before the dogs arrived. Walt said it best one morning, as he sipped coffee beside the pasture. Funny, how a few strays can make a place feel like home again. Eileen's eyes shone as she nodded, stroking Esperanza's ears, while the pups curled up on her lap. The story spread far beyond Lubbock. Local news covered the rescue and the Miller Ranch's new residents. Letters from strangers poured in, some with donations for animal welfare, others with drawings from children who had never met Esperanza but felt moved by her journey. Teachers used Esperanza's story in their classrooms as a lesson in empathy. Even the local sheriff dropped by to say he was proud of the community for pulling together. But underneath all the pride and celebration, Guadalupe understood the deeper lesson. Compassion only matters when it is turned into action. It was not enough to feel sorry or to hope things got better. Change only came when people stepped into discomfort, when they risked failure, heartbreak, or disappointment to do what was right. She reflected on how hard it had been, how close they'd come to losing hope. There were moments, long, lonely hours in Anna's clinic, when every breath felt like a prayer, when survival seemed impossible. Esperanza's journey reminded Guadalupe of her brother's own struggles after his accident, how the world could turn cold and indifferent if you let it. But just as Ana had fought for Esperanza, Guadalupe had fought for her brother, sitting through endless nights in that hospital room, searching for signs of life and possibility. She realized, standing under the cottonwood, that the love and determination she'd given to her brother was the same force that had pulled Esperanza back from the edge. Ana joined her under the tree, leaning against the trunk, arms crossed, a soft smile on her lips as she watched the family play. "You thinking big thoughts again?" Ana teased gently. Guadalupe laughed, brushing away tears she hadn't noticed. "Just realizing how much this changed me, how much I needed to believe something good could come out of a bad place." Ana nodded. "It's funny, we think we're helping them. But really, they're saving us too." She looked at Esperanza, who had now rolled onto her back in the sun, her pups climbing over her belly, the picture of absolute contentment. "She taught me that sometimes you have to fight for trust, and when you finally earn it, it makes you brave enough to try again, for someone else." Moved by the experience, Guadalupe resolved to turn her gratitude into something lasting. She started organizing a community fund for abandoned animals, using Esperanza's story as a rallying cry. She reached out to local businesses, schools, and even her hospital colleagues, gathering support and sharing the lesson that small acts of compassion could ripple outward, transforming whole towns. That evening, as Esperanza and her pups curled up in the porch's fading light, Guadalupe penned a letter for the clinic bulletin board. "If you ever wonder whether one act of kindness can change the world," she wrote, "just remember Esperanza. One night, one stranger, one decision to help, and everything changed, for all of us." Transformation, Guadalupe realized, was not a sudden miracle but a chain reaction, a network of courage, empathy, and relentless hope. Esperanza's journey proved that with every second chance, every gentle hand, every refusal to look away, the world was made new again. And so was she. The sun dropped low behind the cottonwoods at Miller Ranch, painting the sky with colors only Texas could conjure: molten gold, burnt orange, and the faintest brush of lavender. Esperanza lay on the wide wooden porch, her body stretched out, the pups nestled in a tangle against her side. Their soft sighs and twitching paws, even in sleep, made a music sweeter than any lullaby. It was a scene that, months ago, none of those gathered around her would have thought possible. Guadalupe and Ana sat side by side on the porch steps, their hands folded, boots caked with dust, a tiredness in their bones that felt more like fulfillment than fatigue. The Millers were close by, Walt quietly tinkering with a feed bucket, Eileen reading aloud to one of the grandchildren, her voice drifting on the breeze. The ranch was quiet, an almost sacred quiet, alive with the ordinary miracles of life gone right. Guadalupe glanced down at her phone, scrolling through the hundreds of photos she'd taken since that first night at Willow Junction. Each one told a piece of the journey. Esperanza's terrified, defiant stare the night she was rescued, the pups curled like commas against her belly, Ana's gentle hands, the first time Esperanza licked Guadalupe's face in trust, children holding homemade cards by the clinic pen, lucky, impossibly small, napping atop Anna's shoe. She felt her eyes sting with gratitude for all the moments of fear and hope, heartbreak and triumph that had woven them together. Ana, too, found herself reflecting, her gaze drifting across the yard. She'd spent her career trying to save what could be saved, letting go of what she could not. But this story, this dog, this family, something had shifted in her. She realized that rescue work was never just about saving animals. It was about saving each other, about restoring faith in small, relentless steps. She understood now, hope is not naive. Hope is a discipline. It's waking up every morning ready to try again, to believe in what seems impossible, to act even when the odds are long. As twilight settled, Esperanza lifted her head, nose twitching at the breeze. Her scars shone faintly under her golden coat, not marks of shame, but proof that she had survived and healed and found peace. The pup stirred and climbed atop her, dreaming dog dreams in a place where hunger and fear were just distant memories. Guadalupe rose and stood by the porch rail, watching the last light fade. She remembered every turning point, the decision to stop her car in the dark, the terror in Esperanza's eyes, Ana's quiet steadiness, the hope that refused to die in the face of despair. "Do you think," she asked softly, "that people really change because of stories like this?" Anna smiled. "I think stories are the only thing that ever really changes us, because they show us what's possible. They remind us that kindness is a choice, not a coincidence." Eileen came up the steps, setting a gentle hand on Guadalupe's shoulder. "We've had a lot of dogs over the years," she said, her voice warm, "but I don't think any have ever brought a whole town together like she has. People come by just to watch them in the fields. They leave food at our gate. They ask about Esperanza like she's a neighbor." Walt nodded, a rare smile creasing his face. "She taught us all something. That you don't have to be perfect to be worth saving. Sometimes it's the broken ones that show us what love can really do." The porch fell quiet, the hush filled with the deep truth of those words. Esperanza let out a contented sigh, nudging her pups closer. As the stars blinked on overhead, Guadalupe turned to Anna, her voice steady and certain. "I want to keep telling her story. I want everyone to know that sometimes the greatest thing you can do is just stop and help and not look away. We all get chances to do that, even if it's hard, even if it's small." Anna squeezed her hand. "Let's do it. Let's remind people what's possible when we refuse to walk past suffering, when we believe that kindness, no matter how messy or late or imperfect, is always enough." The night deepened, wrapping the ranch in a soft, infinite embrace. Inside, the Millers put the pups to bed, Eileen humming a tune that floated out to the porch. Walt doused the porch light, leaving the world bathed in silver and starlight. Guadalupe wrote her final thoughts for the Animal Rescue Fund, her pen moving easily now. Let Esperanza's story be a reminder. The smallest act of kindness, a sandwich, a phone call, a gentle hand, can start a chain reaction that transforms not just one life, but whole communities. None of us know when we'll be called to act, but when that moment comes, I hope we all find the courage to do something, however imperfect, rather than nothing at all. As she finished, she heard a soft bark from the yard, a gentle, joyful sound. Esperanza, standing in the moonlight, eyes fixed on the faces she'd come to trust. In that moment, Guadalupe felt something settle inside her, a quiet conviction that kindness, even the smallest kind, was never wasted. And so the story of Esperanza and her pups became more than just a tale of rescue. It became a living testament that even in the hardest, darkest moments, hope can survive if we choose to be the person who stops, who acts, who refuses to turn away. The lesson lingered long after the night had passed, echoing with every sunrise over the ranch, a call to action for anyone who heard it. Be the one who helps, be the one who hopes, be the one who believes that every story, no matter how broken, deserves a second chance.